Hi everyone, welcome back to Vibe Academy. I'm going to introduce you today to a new series, which is a really important series about how to connect your application to a database. And more specifically, we will use Supabase to host our tables of our database, and we'll learn how we can connect our app with our Supabase account and how to come up with the first API endpoints that you will want to use, and notably how you can perform the classic actions, which are creating a record inside a table, fetching, reading records or several records from a table, how to update a specific record, how to delete a specific record. So this is really important because this kind of backend logic will be part and parcels of all the application you will vibe code out there. So to explain you these concepts, I will use a concrete example. So this is an app. So this is a doctor appointment app that I use in other series as well. And for now, there's only mock data that is used on this means that all these data, they are not stored in a database. These are fake data. And also when I perform an action to appoint, to schedule an appointment with a specific doctor, there's no backend logic behind, okay? This means that, there's no appointment that is stored anywhere. So anytime I'm going to refresh the page, all the data that I have, altered through these actions will not be stored, okay? So that's why we need database to be implemented. And so by the end of this series, we'll make sure that, all the data that is displayed here from, the list of hospitals to the list of doctors and also the list of appointments actually do come from, real data that were stored in the database. We'll also implement the full-fledged feature to actually schedule an appointment. In terms of setup, obviously we are going to use Supabase, so we'll dive into this tool very soon. And in terms of technical stack, I will use Cursor, and actually I will use Cloud Code inside Cursor. So I will use Cloud Code either from the extension that you can install on Cursor or via the terminal extension from Cloud Code. So why do we need databases? Well, most of you already know that, and as I mentioned it, we need to be able to store data. What we want is that, users can perform various actions on the app, but we want to make sure that those actions are stored somewhere in such a way that whenever the user comes back to the app, all the actions that were performed in the past are accessible again. And these data are stored through tables, okay? And each element of a table is called a record, okay? So you need to think of databases as basically a Google sheet, an Excel sheet, for instance, with a list of lines which corresponds to each record, and the columns of each record corresponds to attributes. So for instance, for hospitals, the attributes will be the name of the hospital, the location of the hospital. For the doctor's table, the attributes and the columns will be the name, the avatar, the specialty, the bio, etc., etc. The one technical term that is also really important to understand is the primary key. So each record inside a database is uniquely defined by what we call a primary key. What that means is that there cannot be two records with the same primary key inside a specific table. So for instance, if we take the example of a hospital's table that we are going to create together, the primary key will be an ID. So that's an ID that we will store ourselves. For this, we will use a type, which is called a UUID. So this is a universal type, basically, of attributes that is composed of 128 bits, and is considered big enough in such a way that it's not possible to replicate it or find this record easily by just testing various combinations of characters. And yeah, you can define hospitals with other attributes as these ones here. So let's just start with the first action. So let's consider that we've created our account on Supabase. You'll see it's very easy to do. We've created a project, so you have 2 projects per account that are available for free. And we are going to create our first table, okay? So we're going to give it a name, no description required for now. And we are going to fill out here the various columns. So as I said, the various columns will correspond to the various attributes that will define the model. So here, that's the hospital. As a type here, I prefer to use, as I said, UUID, so this universally unique identifier. There's already a built-in attribute called created at, which makes sense. And we are going to add the 2 other attributes, which are the name of the hospital. So the name of the hospital will be a text. We can define a default value, but this default value will be filled out automatically whenever we add a new record to the table. This is not something we want. And we said that we wanted also a location. The location will be a text as well. So let's save it here. And as you are going to see, a new table is going to be added to our Supabase account. And what we can do is actually insert a first row. So let's insert one, which is the City General Hospital here. And the location is downtown. The location could be an address. I mean, it doesn't really matter here, actually. Right, and we now have a new record inside that table. The thing is that, as you can see, obviously it's not because we've added, records inside this table that, those records are actually displayed on the app. And that's the goal of the upcoming lessons, is to come up with like a proper connection with Supabase and the corresponding API endpoints that are notably going to enable us to fetch this data from tables inside Supabase.